episode 7 of what has become a winner of a show, the business and leadership stories, courtesy Sachin Bhandari from the Story Co. Sachin is quite an incredible traveler. By that I mean literally traveling the world, and now finally settling down as a business story coach and trainer. And every week he comes in, gives us a business story. You would think on the face of it it's just a story, but the lesson that emanates from it, the business, leadership, and communication lesson, is something that will stand us in good stead. How are you doing, my friend? How's the weather in your part of the world?
I'm lucky, Rishi. Live in the city of Mysore. So Mysore has pretty kind weather all throughout the year. So, thank God for small mercies.
But this story has a little bit of humor in it. I mean, it's almost out of a Amol Palekar, Utpal Dutt film in the 80s.
Good one. Yeah.
And
it probably happened during the same time also.
Probably did. It's the story of Mr. Sumo Moolgaonkar and his luncheons. And this is a man who's considered to be the architect of Tata Motors. He led Telco, the predecessor of Tata Motors, for 4 decades. He really laid the foundation for one of the biggest car makers in India. Tell us his lunch story.
Yeah, yes, Rishi. Super interesting. Lunch is a very important topic for all of us. At least when I was working in a job, that was the highlight of the day. So this story is pretty interesting. I'd like listeners to think while I'm narrating the story as to why Tata Sumo got its name. But let's leave that aside for a while. And Suman Moolgaonkar, like you said, was the architect of Tata Motors' predecessor, that's Telco. Fantastic individual, great leader. However, at one point in time, he started disappearing during lunchtime. He was not there in the cafeteria, he was not there in his cabin and all of that. And of course, when the big boss is not there, all the other people are running around wondering what happened to the big boss, where is he gone? So a lot of his colleagues started spreading this rumor that Mr. Moolgaonkar was probably enjoying a great lunch treat at some lavish restaurant thrown by the dealers, and that rumor spread around for a while. And in fact, some of the employees started an investigation campaign to understand where was Mr. Moolgaonkar having his lunches. And then one day, I think a bunch of them decided to follow him in go looking for him. And they were actually at the end surprised and probably a little embarrassed too that his car was parked outside a roadside, very small dhaba, and they didn't know why would Mr. Sumant Moolgaonkar come and have lunch here, whereas there was probably better lunch at the Telco cafeteria. Later they realized that Mr. Moolgaonkar was actually spending all of his lunch time having lunch with the truck drivers who were driving Tata trucks at that point in time. His entire objective was to have conversations with these truck drivers to understand what were their complaints, what is it that they were looking for in the truck, what is it that we were missing, etc. And then he would bring it back to the factory, to the R&D department and all of that, feed them with the inputs so that they could create a better vehicle with every progressive year. So that was the commitment that this gentleman had to his product, to his company, and more importantly, to his customers and users. So much so that actually Tata Sumo is not inspired by a Japanese sumo wrestler or something like that. Tata Sumo stands for Sumant Moolgaonkar. So Sumant Moolgaonkar. That's the way the company gave a tribute to one of its wonderful leaders who also won a Padma Bhushan posthumously. So yes, that's the story, Hrishi.
That is absolutely terrific. There are no two ways about it. And
and look at what you and I do during lunchtime.
Buddy, what's the business, what's the leadership, what's the communication tip that we can get from this extraordinary story that features the late Mr. Moolgaonkar?
The lesson from this story is fairly simple. I think all of us know it. It's just that we don't implement it as much as we should. More often than not, we are always interested in what is it that we have to say, right? We're having a conversation and always thinking, oh my, what point do I make next so that I come across as really smart and intelligent? Whereas if you look at a lot of great leaders, especially even someone like a Sumant Moolgaonkar, his focus was to listen actively, right? So to go down, sit and have a lunch with a truck driver when you are an executive, of a fairly large company. It's not the easiest thing to do, but he committed himself to do that and to listen to these people and understand their problems and challenges. And I think when we do that, whether we do that with our team members, whether we do that with our customers, with our audiences and all of that, that's where the insights come from. And I think a lot of us should do that. An addition to this tip is that, we've also gotten very used to in feedback and in surveys to ask these very pointed questions which give you monosyllabic answers, right? A yes, no, maybe, all of that. I think there is a world beyond that as well. We need to actually also ask people about when was the first time you felt great? What car gave you the most kind of satisfaction? What is it that, and let people narrate stories. And sometimes when you're listening to them for longer and asking questions, you probably will get better insights than a feedback form. So feedback is not the only way to listen to customers and people. You also need to have an active conversation or listen actively. That's my communication tip for the day, Hrishi.
He has, Sachin Bhandari, a wonderful newsletter called the Win with Stories newsletter, and on it there's some great book recommendations. One is Tata Stories, 40 Timeless Tales to Inspire You, a book written by Harish Bhatt. Mr. Bhatt is somebody that was known to me, and we meet at the Tata Lit Live, the literature festival started by the late Anil Dharkar year after year here at the NCPA, and it's wonderful to exchange notes and ideas with the great man.
So you got to introduce me to him someday.
Yeah, you'll enjoy meeting him. Sachin, where can we reach the Story Co as well as you?
Right. Fairly simple. Let's keep it just one platform. So I write fairly actively on LinkedIn. I write at least 5 days a week. I share business and communication tips on LinkedIn. So, anybody who wants to follow those tips and also get access to my newsletter, which is Win with Stories, can look for Sachin. That's the easy part. Bhandari, that's Bhandary and not I, on LinkedIn, and I'll pop up and they can start following me.
Wonderful. I look forward to meeting you next week on another episode of the Business and Leadership Stories. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Same here, Hrishi. Look forward. Bye-bye.
94.3 Radio 1.